Hey everyone, John here from GetAxis Studio, and today I'm going to be starting a series on just some simple game programming with Unity. Unity is a professional engine, and best of all, it is free, so you can get started at any time. All you need is a computer. So first, what you want to do is go to this website, unity3d.com slash get-unity/download. And download the Unity Hub. The Unity Hub will easily let you sort through all your projects and download all versions of Unity. And once you download that and install that, you'll get something similar to this here. And you obviously won't have all these projects unless you have Unity already installed and been messing around with it. But what you first want to do is you want to go to installs, and then you can add an install. And I recommend you install 2019.2.19f1. That's the one we'll be using in the tutorial series, and that is the one I prefer. Once you're done installing that, it'll probably take a while, but once you're done installing that, you can go to projects and hit new. So it's gonna, if it asks you to select which version, like if you hit this arrow, then just use 2019.2.19. And we'll make it 2D. We're gonna make a 2D, and we'll just call it test project. You can name it something else, but I'm just gonna name it project. And then hit create, and it will load up. Once it loads, I will go over a quick out what everything does. Not everything, but all the necessary things. So it'll take a minute. Alright, once you've loaded in, it might take a minute, but the main thing you'll notice is that your layout will probably look somewhat like this. If it doesn't look exactly like this, that's okay. You should still have everything, and if you don't have a window, go into window, and then any of tabs should have what you're looking for. So the first thing you'll notice here is there's this tab right here called the hierarchy. And the hierarchy is all the objects in your scene, which is what we'll get to next. So this is all the objects. You can click on them, and then you view their properties in the inspector over here. The inspector has all their properties and all their components. The way Unity works is through components on objects. So say this is a camera component for the camera, and you can see all these different things that we can change about the camera. You can add components. There are all kinds of different components you can see here, and I'll explain some of the main ones that we'll need to use today. Alright, so now the scene tab. The scene tab is where you can view your scene. And your scene is your game, basically, everything that's in the level you're currently working on. So you can use the mouse wheel to scroll in and out. Depending on where you scroll, it will do. If I zoom in, this white bounding box in the camera symbol right here, that's the bounds of the camera, which you click on the camera, you can see the camera preview. And since it's blue right now, we can keep it blue, but if you click on this background here, change it to whatever color you want. I think nice dark gray. That's pretty. And then there's these different options up here. Don't worry about these right now. 2D just sets it out of 2D view or 3D view. If you ever get confused, then just keep it in 2D. If you push the middle mouse button, you can grab and sort of pan around. And also same with right click. And this light button just renders the lights. You don't have to worry about lights in a 2D game. And there's a few other things. The next tab you'll see here is the game tab. Game tab is what the camera in our game sees. So, for example, if in my scene I put a square right here, then you would see that square right about the same place on the game tab. The asset store we won't cover today, but it has a bunch of free assets and different things that you can use to make your games. And most of them are free, but some of them are priced. And depending on budget, you can use this. Alright, back to this tab for now. And then there's the project tab, which has all of our assets in it. So all of our assets are all of our scripts that we write, all of our code we write, all of our characters and images, and everything that we use to make the game goes in assets, including our scenes, which are our levels, like you said here, our scenes are levels. So that's a quick explanation of the layout. So today, just to get you all started off with a simple game that we can make to explain basic C# concepts, which C# is the language that Unity is, the code language. If you're not familiar with it, it's similar to Java, JavaScript, if you are familiar with those. And if you're not, that's okay. We're going to start learning from scratch today. All right, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a square. Now, Unity doesn't have a built-in square. I could probably download one from the asset store, but a good concept in game design is to make as much as you can yourself. So even if it's simple. So I'm just going to go into Paint here, and I'm going to resize it to something like 500 by 500. It'll probably be good for me. Make a simple 500 by 500. That's about it. And it's white. It's that one. White. There we go. And I'm just going to save it. I'll save it somewhere like desktop, for instance. I'll just save it as square. And then I like to put how big it is. So I'll do 500 by 500 because that's approximately what it is, and save it. And then what I'll do is I'll open my File Explorer and I'll have it where I know that I saved it, desktop. And I'll just take this and drag it into the little project tab down here, into the assets area. So that I can close that out. You can see I have my square here. Now, if I just put all my images and code and everything down here, it would get really messy and it'd be hard to find what I'm looking for. So I'm going to go and right-click, just right-click. We'll bring up this menu, create, then at the top here, folder. And then I can type to name it. So I'm just going to name this Sprites. Sprites is what I like to call all my images that I'm using. Then I can just drag that into there and double-click it to open. So then I can take, so here view. In my assets, I right-clicked, create, folder, named it, and I took my square by clicking on it and dragging, and plopped it into Sprites. Then I double-clicked to open it. So now I'll take my little square here. See, I could drag it onto here, but I'm just going to drag it into the hierarchy. And that makes a new object. A new square 500 by 500 object. And for my purposes, this is going to be the player, so I'm just going to name it player like that. Now, I think that's pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to now, you see we have all these options up here. So the hand tool, move around, move tool, I can move it with the arrows, or I can grab it in the center here on this little square and drag it. Then the rotate tool, can rotate it, so blue rotates it this way, red rotates it on the x-axis. So real quick, axes are how we think of it's how we think of 2D and 3D environments. So X is left and right, Y is up and down, and Z is sort of front and back, or well, Z is up and down in a sense, but that doesn't really matter right now. All we need to worry about is the X and Y axis. So all we need to worry about is left to right, X, and up and down, Y. So then in the transform here, you can see that I've messed around with some of the settings by doing these different things. I'm going to right click it and hit reset, and that's back to normal. Then there's scale, the scale tool. So I can grab this orange one to scale it on the X axis, hit Control Z to undo that. And then the green one scales it on the Y axis. Undo that as well. So now, and then I can grab in the middle to scale on both axes. So probably about there is good. I'm gonna scale it down a little bit because 500 by 500 is pretty big, but fine because I can scale it down. Now if I click on my game tab, I can see what it's gonna look like in my game, like this. Probably make it a little bit smaller. That's probably about good. That's probably about what I want. So now what I'm gonna do is I am going to color my player. So I don't have to color it in Paint. If I want to color it, if there's a white sprite, I can come over here to the sprite renderer component on our player. So you click on the player, sprite renderer will show all the other players. And I'll just click on this color. I can drag it around. You can see I can color it. So for my player, I think I'll do yellow. Yellow sounds good. Aim to see how it looks. Perfect. Looks in yellow. That is perfect. All right. And then what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go back to assets here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to make a new folder. Okay, right click, create. I'm going to name this folder scripts. This is going to contain all of my different scripts that I'm going to use to code them. So I double clicked it to enter it, and I'm going to right click, create, sharp script. I'm going to create this little file here. It's going to ask you to name. I'm just going to name this player movement or movement. Now, something that I have to do before I can code the player movement is I have to give player here for components. So, for our player's purposes, we are going to add a rigid body 2D. Rigid body is the sort of the physics component. So I want to be able to control my player's physics. I'm going to click add component. Then I could go through this physics 2D and find it. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to search rigid. If I just search rigid, it'll show up rigid body 2D. Since this is a 2D game, I'm going to be using 2D. Now you'll see all these properties here. It doesn't really matter. The only ones that really matter are gravity scale. The gravity scale is how the gravity affects the player. So if it's 1, I hit play right now. The play button up here is test your game. You'll see it just falls. However, I don't really think that I want gravity in this game. I just want to be able to control my player's movements and physics and have it render physics. So I'm just going to hit 0 for that and I'm going to click it, 0, hit enter, and that's good. Now if I hit play, you'll notice it's not going to do anything. It doesn't have any gravity. So that's perfect. And then what I'll do is I'll click on my player movement script here. I'll double click it. That will open up Visual Studio. So the first thing you'll notice up here is these using tags. Don't delete them. They're pretty important. Using system, anything using system just gives you base code algorithm, basic declarations and things, which that doesn't matter right now. And then using Unity engine, which lets us connect to Unity, make this code work for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, so let me just explain. You see, this says public class player movement, then colon mono behavior. All right, so public means that it's accessible from anywhere. Class means that it's a script. It's a class, it's a script. Player movement is just the name of our script. Then this colon here means extends. Extends means it inherits. So, for example, if I just say I write some code in here, and then I make another script extend the code that I wrote, then that means I can access the code that I wrote in there from the new script. So mono behavior is Unity's, it's the base class from which every Unity script derives. It's Unity's base script. Its core features are in mono behavior. So, all that's fine. Now, these two voids, we're going to delete for now. That is what we're going to do. So, it's always good to space out your code nicely. So, I'm going to hit enter, and up arrow, and then enter again to make some space. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare some variables. Now, variables hold data. They store, whether it be a number or a component or a text or anything. Variables store stuff, and there's different types of variables. So first, there are public variables. Public variables mean that they can be accessed from any script. They're public. Then there's private variables. Private variables are variables that can only be accessed from the script we're currently writing. So, that doesn't matter too much for now. Also, I'll show you another thing. Public variables can be accessed from the Unity editor, so I can change their values from the Unity. So I'm going to make a public float. Float is a type of number. There are two main number types in Unity. There's int, which is short for integer. Integer is a whole number, any whole number, 1, 2, -5, any number like that. A float is any number. It could be 1, 2, -5, or 1.36. It could be pi. It could be any number, even if it's a decimal number. So I'm going to make a float because sometimes I want to use decimal numbers. And then I'm going to call it speed. So after you declare its privacy level, public or private, and its type, then you declare its name, use spaces in between. So speed. So speed. So you see it's giving me an error because I haven't finished yet. And then I'm going to say equals. So I'm going to set a default value, 1. And you'll notice I could do just 1 here, but since it's a float, I like to add an F after the number, so it doesn't, the code likes it if you add an F after a number if it's supposed to be for a float. So that's what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to hit enter. Then for spacing, I'll hit enter again. And now I'm going to create a variable so I can reference my rigid body from the code, my physics component. So I'm going to say public so I can assign it from the editor. Rigid body 2D. You'll see it's green, that means it's a class. So blue is sort of like a built-in system variable types, and green is unity system. So rigid body 2D, and then I'm going to just call it rigid lowercase body with a capital B. Now the reason that I do this is it's a good habit called Camelcase. When you're making variables, or any kind of variable at all, it's good to do first letter not capital for the first word, and then the first letter of the second word and every word after that is capitalized. So it's nice and easy to read for yourself and any other programmers that may be working on a team with you. So that's just some good habits right there. Now I'm going to hit enter twice again so I can make myself some more space. And I'm going to write private. This time I don't need to access the variable from the or another script. Vector2, so it just holds an x and a y value. It just holds a 2D point. And I'm going to call it move amount. That would be this will be the amount that I'm going to move in the up and down and also in the left and right. Alright, now I'm going to hit enter twice, and that'll be good for my variables. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to call a function. So, well, we're going to write a function. So a function is a chunk of code that we can call from anywhere in the script, and sometimes Unity itself calls it. So, for example, update. If I type in update, you'll see this shows up here. You can double click it, and it'll write this private void update. Remember, private. So void is the function type. So void is a system type for functions. And then I name it update, but it's blue because it's a Unity system function that Unity automatically calls every fraction of a second. So update. And then it has these two parentheses. The parentheses just tell it that it's a function. They call this function. And sometimes there'll be variables inside the parentheses, but we're not going to worry about that. And next, these curly brackets just sort of make up the, they just say that this is the bounds of the function. This is where the function code starts, and this is where the function code ends. That's just a simple way to keep track of where everything is, and that's a good reason why you need to have good spacing so you can clearly see where your functions end and begin. So now I'm going to, like I said, make some more space in here. So I'm going to enter, up arrow, enter again, myself some nice room. And then I'm going to say move amount. So remember, that's the variable we declared up here. And I'm going to set it. So I'm going to say dot x. So a dot is how you access a property of something. So say move amount is my variable, but it has two properties, x and y. So I'm going to say move amount.x equals, remember equals, we're setting something. Input. So input is how we get input from the keyboard, the mouse, a controller if you have it plugged in. Dot get axis, then parentheses, because GetAxis is a function that the system already wrote for us. GetAxis is a function. And then I'm going to hold down shift and press the quote button so it does double quotes. So I'm just going to make one quote and then make another quote. And in here, the quotes are just so we can tell it what axis we want. So I'm just going to say horizontal, because that will be the left and right. So x, remember x is left and right, so I'm going to put the x left and right value into there. Then I'll hit enter again. Pretty much the same thing. Move amount. dot y this time. Y, I'm going to set the up and down equals input dot GetAxis. Again, you always put a semicolon at the end of your scripts, of your code lines. It's basically the equivalent of a period. So, and then same thing, put the quotes in there. And I'm going to type vertical. Vertical is the up and down, the Y, the up and down. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Now this function is done. So every single time, so every fraction of a second, it'll set moveAmount.x to our horizontal input, and it'll set moveAmount.y to our vertical input. Then I'm going to, after this parenthesis, or this curly bracket, sorry, hit enter twice, make myself some more room, and type fixed up. So fixed update. And then if you see here, I could double click it or I can hit enter. It'll automatically make this private void fixed update. It's another function. Fixed update is called every fraction of time versus every frame. The update is every frame, which is every there's roughly 90 frames a second, I think, or 60 frames a second is the start. So, and fixed update is every time that passes in between. Basically, they're the same thing, except fixed update is a little bit more rigid. So it'll look a little bit smoother than update, which occurs really fast. So make ourselves some room in here. And I'm going to type rigid body. I'm going to reference my rigid body up here, my physics component that I made. Dot, accessing a property, move position. So this is a function that the physics classes have. You'll notice it's red. It's because it's an error, because it needs vector 2, which we're going to put into it. It moves the rigid body to position. So what we're going to do is we're going to put rigid body dot position. So that's its current position plus move amount. So it's current x and y plus our new x and y that we're putting into it. And then we're going to multiply that by speed, so it'll go the speed that we want it to go. And then we're going to do another thing, just so it looks smooth. Even if you have an old computer and it doesn't run at exactly 60 frames per second, if it's slower, just so it moves the same and it doesn't cause any weird issues, we're going to put in time dot fixed delta time. So that's just a good time dot fixed delta time is the interval in seconds at which physics and other fixed frame rates update. So it's just every fraction of a second. So time dot fixed delta time is just every fraction of a second, but it'll make sure that our code doesn't lag or be weird on laggy computers. It'll work just fine on everything. Alright, that is all we have to do for this script, so I'm going to hit Control and S at the same time. Save it, and you'll notice it went green instead of yellow. Yellow means unsaved. Green. And then I can minimize this out. And then what I can do is so let's see, so that should work. So I'm going to take this, click and drag onto the player. You'll notice nothing happens. So I'm on the player now. You'll see we have this new component, player movement. It says speed 1, rigid body, none, rigid body 2D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rigid body 2D, the physics component of my player, and drag it, click and drag, into the rigid body spot. Drag, rigid body spot. That'll be perfect, and I'll leave the speed at 1 for now and just see how it works. Then I'm going to hit play. Now, I can move my little square. It also works. It works not only with the keyboard, but also with a controller. So, 1 is sort of slow, you may notice. It might not be for you, so you might have to tweak this value. I'm going to put 5 and see how that works. That seems pretty good. You see that's a nice smooth motion there. Alright, I think that's good for our player. And now we are going to make a bounding box, because if you'll notice, right now, you just disappear off the screen. If we go to our scene tab, see that we're still there, but we're off the screen, and our player doesn't know how to get back, probably. So we're going to make a bounding box to keep them inside the screen. So what we're going to do, we're going to right-click on the hierarchy here, click Create Empty. It'll just make a game object. It'll have nothing really on it. I'm going to right-click and reset the transform. Now it's at the very center. Now I'm going to click on this over here. I'm going to right-click it, name it, and rename this wall. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add component. I'm going to search box. Here, box collider 2D. So we want to use a collider. That means it has collision, registers collision, and 2D since this is a game. Then what we can do is hit this button, this edit the collider, drag this, it doesn't really matter, then drag this side to the wall, drag this up to the top of the wall, drag this down to the bottom of the wall. So now the left side will be done, good to go. Now I'm gonna right click on my little wall here, hit duplicate. Then I'm going to click the edit collider again, drag it. It works nicely for the top now. Drag it across that top line. Side things. Thing, click, right click, edit collider. Fit to how it needs to be. White lines. Click, right click, duplicate, collider. And now, if you'll notice, if you test your game by hitting the play button, it still goes outside the screen. The reason that is because our player doesn't have a collider on it. It only has this physics component. That's not a collider. We're going to add component. Need to research box and research it. Box collider 2D. Now you see that if we zoom in with our mouse wheel, green edges can perfectly line up around the square. Unity does its best to automatically line up the edges of the colliders perfectly. So now, we hit play. We go up to the side of the screen. It stops. Stop. And every single place that you put a wall, perfectly stop the square. So the player can no longer leave the screen. Perfectly. Perfect. Alright. Now, since this game is pretty useless, we don't have anything we can do, we're going to go to our Sprites folder, take our square, and drag it into the scene again. Now it's pretty big, so I'm going to use the scale tool up here, size it down to about the same size. I'm going to use the move tool and just move it over here, so I'm doing. I'm going to click it, and then right click it, name. I'm going to rename this bubble. It's a square, but that's fine for now. And the color, I'll make it a blue. That blue is perfect. Alright, now we have our little bubble here. Bubble is perfect. And for now, I think that is good. Perfect. Alright, and now I'm going to, let's see. So I think for this game, I'm just going to make a simple thing where bubbles randomly appear and the player has to go collect them. So what I'm going to do, now that I've made my bubble, is I'm going to make a game controller. So a lot of games have a script running in the background called a game controller, and it sort of controls everything that happens in the game. I'm going to go to my scripts folder, right click in empty, create, C# script. I'm going to name this game controller, like that. Click it, that opens it up. Now we can in our two scripts. So in the game controller. And now I'm going to put this on the camera because that's a pretty good place to put a game for the camera. I'm going to go back to my code. And what I'm going to do is I am going to make a function that will spawn the bubbles. It'll spawn bubbles forever and ever. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I can delete this update. Now this function here, this start function, is called in the very beginning. Only once. It's not multiple times, it's just once in the very beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type start, or you might see it shows up, you can enter if it shows up, start coroutine. Then I'll put my semicolon period at the end, put my brackets to show it's a function. You'll show it so it shows red. It wants a method. So I'm going to call this method spawn bubbles. I'm going to put the parentheses again because spawn bubbles is going to be a function. So I'm going to come down here. Instead of a void, voids usually only run once. So I want to make something called an IEnumerator. It should show up green like that. IEnumerator, and then I'm going to type my name, spawn bubbles, same exact way that I typed it up there, parentheses. And I'm going to hit the shift and hit the bracket to make it a curly bracket. I'm going to hit enter, and it'll automatically put it down there like that. Give myself some more space. You'll notice it's still red. It's because it has to return a value. You'll see what we're going to do. So just to satisfy it, write yield. Yield means to stop the code for a second. Turn new, so we're going to make a new something. A new wait for seconds. Now wait for seconds only works in IEnumerators. And I'm going to do 5. 5 is perfect. So I'll just wait for 5 seconds and then do nothing. But what we want it to do, we want it to wait for 5 seconds. And then we want to make it spawn our little bubbles in a loop. So first, down here, up here, I'm going to make a public game object. So game object is our objects, remember. I'm going to call it bubble. And then that's all I need. So I'll assign it in Unity when we're done with this script. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, so now we're going to write something called a loop. A loop runs until we tell it to stop running. So I'll say, you could do a for loop that will run a specific amount of times, but I'm going to do a while loop. While will run until a condition turns false. So while, say if I did 1 is greater than 3, that would never run because 1 is not greater than 3. If I did 1 is less than 3, that would run forever. So I'm just going to do while true. True is just a basic variable. True and false are 2 basic system variables that just mean true or false. So while true, that means it'll run forever, because true is always true. I'm going to say, so first, I'm going to Control X to cut this out of here and put it in here. So first, my script is going to wait 5 seconds, and then I'm going to instantiate, so create a new bubble. So I'm just going to type bubble in here. All I need, I want to instantiate a new bubble. So I'm going to, this instantiate function asks for a game object to instantiate. So I put in bubble. I'm going to hit enter. Well, first, what I'm going to do is I want to be able to, I want to have a way to reference my new bubble. So I'm not going to write private or public. I'm just going to write game object, new bubble, using the Camelcase like I showed you, equals instantiate bubble. So the new bubble, that means we now have a way to access our new bubble. So now I'm going to say new bubble dot transform. So transform is the position, rotation, and scale. So basically all the physical number values. So I'm going to do position equals, I'm going to set the position to a new vector 3 or vector 2. Vector 2. So I want to set the position vector 2, and it's going to be for now I'll just do, say, 1, 1. So 1 is the x, so it's going to be 1 to the right and 1 up. Because it's 1, 1. 1 is x and 1 is also the y. So what that'll do is it'll just make a new bubble at that spot every specific time. So I'm going to go back into Unity. And then what I'm going to do is Unity has a handy feature. So say my bubble, I want to be able to make multiple copies of it and access it from the code. So what I'll do is I'll take my bubble. So first I'll go into assets and I'm going to create a new folder called Prefabs. The prefab in Unity is just a game object that is not in the hierarchy. So it's not currently in the game, but it can be spawned into the game code. So I'm going to click my bubble and drag it into the prefabs. Then I can delete this bubble. So now I still have it, even though it's not in there. I can still edit everything about it. Just can't see it. I could drag it in if I wanted to, but Now I'm going to go to the main camera where we put our game controller, and for the bubble, I'm just going to drag in our bubble prefab. Hope that makes sense. So then if I hit play, every 5 seconds, on a bubble, you'll see it appear. Yep, bubble clone, right there. It's going to do it at 1-1 every single time. You see I can't do anything with it yet, and they're all spawning on top of each other, so you can't see them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be able to make it so the bubble actually does something. So first, on the bubble, I'm going to drag one into the hierarchy so I can edit it. I'm going to add a component, box collider 2D. So now I can hit the bubble. So since I changed it, I've made an override to it. If I just delete it now, then the bubble prefab won't have this change. So I have to go to overrides, and then you'll see overrides to bubble and scene. Bubble, I added a box collider 2D. If I wanted to revert all, it would change it back. If I hit apply all, it will change it the way I edited it. So I'm going to hit apply all. And now the bubble prefab has a box collider on it. So now I can collide with it. So I'm going to delete it now. And now you'll see when I run my game, bubble appears. I can collide with it. Can't be pushed at all, but I can collide with it. Alright. So, now what I'm going to do is something special on the bubble. Drag your bubble back in. You'll see this value here. It says is trigger. Is trigger means that it won't, like how my square was just running into it and wouldn't go through it before. Is trigger just means that it's sort of like a ghost. But it detects collisions, but it doesn't get pushed or push anything. So again, overrides, apply all, because I want to apply my changes. Then I can delete it. So now what I'm going to do is back in my game controller, I'm going to see about how large my game area is here. So it goes from about -8 on the X, 8 on the X. I'm going to use 8 because it's a safer number. And then about 4, just say 4 on the Y, and -4 on the Y. Zero that out again by zeros, just because center. So about 4 on the Y and 8 in either direction X. So what I'm going to do here is instead of 1-1, I'm going to enter random.range. Random.range gives a random number between two range. So for the X, it was -8 to 8, -8 comma 8. So -8 to 8. That -8 to 8, perfect. So that's the X, -8 to 8, and then same thing, random.range. I want this one to be -4 to 4. Then I accidentally deleted my other parentheses, encompassing that, and then I'll enter. So perfect. So now the X will be somewhere between -8 and 8, and the Y will be somewhere between 4. Now if I save that, hit play, you'll notice that every 5 seconds, it'll spawn a bubble in a random position. There. Every 5 seconds, it'll spot, yep, right there. It'll just keep picking random positions to spawn the bubbles in. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So now, I gotta make a way so I can collect the bubbles, right? So I'm gonna go to scripts. I'm going to right click, create, sharp script. And I'm going to make this is going to be called collision. So collision handler. So it's going to handle the collisions for my player. I'm going to double click it to open it. I'll open it up in Visual Studio here. So what I'm going to do is I can delete all this. I'm going to type in on trigger. You see right here, on trigger enter 2D. That's what I want. So anytime it hits anytime it enters a collision with another object that is marked as a trigger in its collider, it'll trigger this function. You see collider 2D collision? That's just it just gives me the object that we collided with. It just gives me the collider of the object we collided. So I'm going to say collision dot game object. So I'm getting the game object of the object we collided with. Dot So sorry, I forgot. We have to put it inside of a destroy. We're just going to destroy it. Get rid of it for now. So that's the destroy function. Collision dot game object. That will just destroy the game object we collided with. back to Unity, code. I'm going to drag my collision handler onto the player, any values, and now, anytime a bubble spawns, you'll be able to go and then make it disappear. Boom, now it's gone. Boom, it's gone. Perfect, so that's exactly what I want. But it's sort of boring if we don't have a score, so I'm going to make a score variable, so to hold our score. So open up Visual Studio again. In our game controller, I'm going to come down here under the bubble. Public. What I'm going to do is called static. So a static variable means it's the same. So even if we had our game controller script on multiple objects, this variable would be the same. So static, it's always the same, no matter which object you're accessing. So public static int, because I don't want my score to be a decimal number. I want it to be a whole number. 4. Then I can set it to 0 as a start. You don't want to start with. So it starts at 0. And then if I go back to my collision handler, and after I destroy the collision object, I can say game controller, so exactly what you called your script, or exactly what you called class that the script encompasses, dot score. You see, game controller dot score. That is what we made here. Then I can do plus plus. So plus plus just means increment it by 1. So score is equal to score plus 1. I could also do the same thing. Equals game controller dot score plus 1. Just means to add it to 1 to the score. If I save that, go back to Unity, hit play, loads. I'll click on the camera. You can see oh, I forgot. Static variables don't show. But now you'll see every time that we get a bubble, our score will go up by 1. But we can't see that. We're not showing that to the player. So we want to make a text so we can show it to the player. So right click in the hierarchy, then go to UI, text. So automatically make a canvas, an event system, and a text. Don't delete these. Canvas is just the screen. So I'm going to modify the canvas because you'll see sort of another weird box here. It says screen space overlay. I'm going to make it to screen space camera and then drag in my main camera. So now it's exactly the same as the camera. And then on the text, I'll move up here. You can barely see because it's sort of black and small. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to click this. This is the UI editor button that I can edit UI items with. I'm going to put it in the top left corner. About that big. And I'm going to make it say score, full space. Make it say whatever you want, like points or whatever. You can do that for now. And for font size, I want to make it a little bit bigger. 24, 32. Yep, that was nice and big. On the game scene, still see, we can barely see it because that's almost the same color. For the color, white. White seems like I can see it nicely up here. Not displaying a number yet, but we're going to fix that. So even if I hit play now, still you'll see score here. Anytime I get a bubble, still does nothing. We got to program it to do something. We got to code it to do something. So I'll go back to my game controller, and then I'll make a new public text. But you notice it doesn't like text. So what we have to do, because text is not automatically in here, we have to add it using a using. So using Unity Engine, so a special version of Unity, a special preface of the Unity Engine called UI, using Unity Engine.ui. So now we can make our public text called score text. Make it score text. Because if we name it score, there's another score, it won't work. So then, what I'll do is I'll come down here and type in update. So I'll just write void update, and enter, and it'll automatically do that. And then I'll say score text dot text, so the text part of score text, equals, the score text is just the game object, so we want to access the text of the score we had before, colon, space, plus, I'm going to add our score to it. So if our score is 0, it'll say score 0. If it's 1, it'll say score 1, just like that. So I can control S to save, back to Unity, hit play. And you'll notice from the get-go, it should show the score is 0. Get one. Still not working. Oh, I know why. So you may notice that I have an error down here in my console tab. It's saying no reference exception. Object reference not set to an instance of an object, which means I forgot to tell the camera which text the score text was. So I'm going to take my score text here. Now if I hit play, it should work. There we go, score is 0. And then as soon as I get a bubble, response, boom, score 1. That will just keep going forever and ever. And now if you're noticing that it's cutting off for some reason, and click on your text on the rect tool and make sure that it's big enough. So if it's like this, and if it's like that, then the number will be cut off. So you want to make sure it's big enough. Everything. Alright, and that is the simple bubble game. Next up, I'll be continuing the tutorial. We'll be making an actual game. This is sort of a little tiny test thing, but thank you all for watching. I hope you all had a good time next time.